So heading into game 2 here, Allegiance is going to have to switch things up. Not necessarily picks and bans, but at least how they play. They can't necessarily put 2 Guardians in that soul lane versus 2 Warriors. Just let CycloneSpin be left alone in a 1v2. Make sure that your Hunter doesn't fall too far behind in the early laning phase.
Well, Hunbats and Kabrakan, the 2 early bans for Team Allegiance. Flashpoint, they still don't want to see CycloneSpin or anyone on Team Allegiance control that. Morrigan and Sylvanus taken away from Shadowq. Love this pick here by Allegiance.
It makes sense because Shadowq did so much work with this god. Didn't have to, whenever you can play a god that doesn't put yourself out of position to make plays like that, then it's a relatively safe thing to do. And that's the key word here, is safe. Flashpoint was safe the whole time around with their engagements from long range, whereas Team Allegiance, you know, they had the Bacchus belly flop, and that was their only form of long range engagement, which puts PBM out of position. But now playing Sylvanus, he's going to be safe.
Medusa, the selection for Oceans or Metyankey in that mid lane, and Osiris locked in for CycloneSpin. I'm already liking this draft significantly more for Team Allegiance. Much more pressure on the side lanes rather than focusing on that mid-jungle combination. This is a typical Flashpoint composition, though, Toli. If you've got Shadowq on your team, it's no surprise when he wants to play the Bacchus, and it synergizes beautifully with this Awilix. That also works with his Vulcan with a meatball knockup.
Knockups on knockups on knockups. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe a Xing way here for XenoTronics either. He definitely likes to play that god every now and then, so that could be something to look forward to later on. But like you mentioned before, Osiris onto CycloneSpin here, looking to play a very aggressive, but it's not going to be the Xing way here.
It's going to be the Skadi instead, a god that has really seen quite a bit of success as of late here in the SPL. Agni going to be the selection, a little bit more mobility for Metyankey in that mid lane, who in game 1 just never really got a chance to do anything in that game with the Poseidon.
Absolutely. We haven't really been calling his name at all in that first game because of just how far behind everybody else was on his team. Obviously, Weekend having many deaths, unfortunately, it's not something you want for your jungler, and whenever your jungler falls behind, so does the mid laner.
Every single time, it's always a result of that jungler falling behind. And Xing another knock-up here for Flashpoint in that solo lane. 4 of the members on the team have that knock-up available to them to set up for Mirage on this Awilix. So hoping to have a little bit more success on the god than Weekend did in game 1. Flashpoint looking to secure the 2-0 victory, not only to finish off the split on a strong note, but to get themselves the 6th seed going into the Gauntlet land. And Allegiance, they're trying to avoid a bad 2-0 here that would lead them to a tiebreaker up against Noble.
Definitely want to avoid that possible scary situation for Team Allegiance, but they have the tools at their disposal here to go into their identity. You know, CycloneSpin playing a very aggressive soul laner here is something that we're used to seeing from him in the past. Whenever he plays these Guardians, it's usually to set up his other teammates, but not so successful that last game due to that early poor start on Allegiance. But now, the aggressive combination between Weekend on the Ratatoskr and Cyclone on the Osiris, this is what we're expecting out of these 2 players.
Yeah, Cyclone just walking into the enemy jungle and making it difficult for you to do what you want to do. He's going to pop the health pot, but it should be a pretty easy pressure situation for the Osiris Ratatoskr. Ratatoskr also receiving a couple nerfs more recently than Soul did in game 1, but we haven't seen quite as much of the little guy in terms of the jungle, but still a solid pick as far as the assassins go.
We're still doing a good job in terms of making his presence known in the map as Ratatoskr, being able to upgrade the Acorn without having to go back to base. I love what Shadowq is doing here, trying to body block ALG Ocean's shots here, trying to min-max the potential of XenoTronics. Oh, Shadowq was so low, and that would have been very awkward had he died that early on.
Yeah, it really would have been, but Ocean's not going to be able to get all 4 of those little side camps on the jungle side. I believe he got 3 out of 4, that we didn't see exactly how it came together on that red buff. So Ocean's definitely behind XenoTronics early on here, as Flashpoint, the hunter for them, not only gets the wave, but the purple buff experience as well, which he hands right over to Shadowq.
Yet again, Allegiance is putting Oceans in a position where he's destined to fail in the early laning phase, being left in a 1v2 spot, has to concede a little bit of gold under the tower. Not only that, he's going to be behind in the experience department to XenoTronics after that purple buff invade. But But this is a little different story than the last game because of the pressure that Allegiance has this time around in the solo lane, being level 3 versus 2.
Cyclone coming around the back. Mirage might be in some trouble here. Doesn't have the dash, but Weaken, his focus was onto Aquarius.
Different targets between these players, a little bit of a disconnect. CycloneSpin, he wants to commit. He had the passive for all that damage mitigation, not able to connect on that first ability. Took more damage than he necessarily needed to, but he still has that health chalice and one more health potion, not to mention the death toll for the sustain.
Exactly, those cleave auto attacks with the death toll definitely coming up big for the solo laner. Osiris, definitely one of the things that makes him potent in this lane is just his sustain option. Mirage, very low HP, but deciding not to back quite yet. Weaken also hanging around here, but he's going to get the stun onto Aquarius. He's going to have to jump away. There's a 2, not quite enough damage, but the 1 will secure it for Cyclone. First blood going the way of the solo lane veteran.
Cyclone's been very patient, waiting for the stun before he threw out the sickle. Weaken also very patient, hovering around that corner for as long as possible. Once the jump was down from Aquarius, that triggered Weaken to go in right off the bat, recognizing that would be a very easy opportunity to get a guaranteed stun. And just like that, what was the first game, first blood for Flashpoint in the solo lane, is first blood for Allegiance in the second game in the solo lane.
And it's not the it's the pressure solo laner this time around. Hercules is good with a lead, yes, but Osiris is about as scary as it gets for warriors that get an early lead in this solo lane. Not only in terms of the solo potential in lane, but the rotational ability of Osiris can really make problems for the mid lane for Flashpoint.
Aquarius, he's not done yet. Weaken, this is something that he just loves to do, just hover around CycloneSpin's lane. We haven't seen it very often recently, but during the AFK days, Team Envious days, this is a very common strategy between these two players. Whenever they had a lot of pick opportunities to flex between them, I'm looking specifically at Agni, Kwang, a lot of these gods that they like to play and flex, made it very difficult for teams in oppositions to really counter them.
Incon's got a little bit of a lead right now on Metyankey because he was left alone in the mid lane, whereas PBM was there hanging out with his mid laner, making sure his farm was safe and sound. Xeno uses the ultimate in this duo lane trying to chase down Oceans, but Ocean's going to be able to escape without using his purification beads or his ult. So Xeno loses a little bit of that kill potential early on in the duo lane. Speed buff being looked at by Allegiance.
And not only that, XenoTronics, without that ultimate, it's a defensive tool to be able to counter-engage against if Weaken ever decided to invade on the left-hand side.
Ooh, speed buff was secured there by Allegiance despite the ultimate coming out of Incon. Just used to try and secure the buff. And in the early stages of the game, Tully, I've got no problem with that sort of play coming out of a more late game oriented mid laner like Vulcan.
Vulcan definitely has different stages of the game. You're relying on more the setup from your meatball to set up other teammates that's in position to find the kills. But you can be a one-man wrecking crew in that late game. Once you get the levels and the items, the damage is online, the scaling is very efficient for the Vulcan. You can actually look for a full combination and one-shot somebody if that's going to be a squishy.
I mean, we talk about Scylla when it comes to late-game mages. That's the real big one, I think. But Vulcan is right there, man, when it comes to late-game damage potential. Backfire is on such a short cooldown. You can really utilize that consistently in the late game, not only for its incredible damage, but its mobility that provides you. The turret provides excellent zone control in jungle team fights, and that meatball is just guaranteed setup for your team and also does a significant amount of damage once it's maxed.
Absolutely, a 5-second cooldown just like that. Incon finally back into base, finishing off that Shoes to the Mad Guy, granting himself a little bit more penetration to be able to find some of these kills. And look at this disparity in the level department. Weaken 2 levels ahead of Mirage. Completely different story than the last game.
Yeah, it was the exact opposite last game where Mirage was significantly ahead of Weaken. This tells me totally that Awilix is just not it's not her day today. If you're in the later sets, if you're Gabe, E-United, Luminosity, Eager, don't pick Awilix.
I just think like the positioning of the junglers to start off could have been a little bit improved between both of these teams. The Guardians is what kind of hindered both of their starts. Obviously, last game, it was the Kuzenbo that couldn't really make the impact in the early level 1, level 2 laning phase. Same thing goes with Xing early on. You might as well just sacrifice the Xing and make sure you get off to a better start in the dual lane and in the mid lane instead. Because the Mana Chalice was even bought for Aquarius, recognizing that he would be at a disadvantage without his blue buff potentially.
Yeah, he's not expecting to grab that blue buff. Well, he should be expecting another gank coming out of Weaken because that's what Weaken likes to do whenever CycloneSpin gets a little bit of the lead on this right side. I really like the kind of dichotomy of the solo lane picks right now, Toli, because you've got the two opposite ends of the spectrum. Osiris has been dominant as of late as the pressure premier warrior, and then you've got the Guardians to be passive. No passivity here for CycloneSpin as he tries to chase down XenoTronics, beats and ultimate used by the Hunter to get out of danger. Both teleports by solo laners now on cooldown, but ALG still feel confident enough to start up this Gold Fury despite the 5v5 grouping.
CycloneSpin doing a good job zoning. He's a little bit of damage, but it's only level 1 meatball. That's only level 8 on the Vulcan. Not too much to write home about, but going into the backline, Shadowq setting up the pull from Mirage.
Nice flop there. Aquarius can't quite find the jump. The Vulcan ultimate not going to be enough to secure the kill. Aquarius falls to Oceans for the second kill of the game. Both in Allegiance's favor. PBM with a nice pull, but it's not enough to secure Mirage quite yet. Cyclone trying to pick it up. The meatball buys Mirage some space, but finally Oceans knocks him down. Number 2 for the Hunter in the kill column, and Allegiance controlling the game early on here. 3-0. Gold Fury, that's next on the list.
They're a little low, though. They're 3 members of Flashpoint. Looking at them from a distance, Metyankey doing a good job. That bomb connecting onto all 3 targets. XenoTronics trying to get into it. Gold Fury, Flashpoint, they stole it!
Again, the objective control from Allegiance just isn't there. Metyankey picks up Incon, but PBM's getting chased down by a dog. Coldier not quite enough with that last in-hand there. But Flashpoint steal away the objective once again. Allegiance must be frustrated at this point. They cannot seem to secure anything right now in terms of objectives.
Despite the objective not being secured by Allegiance, experience is still in their favor. They're doing a good job winning these positional battles around the first objective of the second game, so they could still look just to reset. Okay, like, we didn't secure that Gold Fury. We're just going to extend the laning phase now. We're just going to continue to farm, look for any sort of advantages here. 3-level advantage for Weekend here over Mirage. He could look to start rotating, at least in the duo lane, making sure that Oceans gets an advantage over XenoTronics.
And Weekend did kind of ditch that team fight whenever he thought the Gold Fury was going to go Allegiance's way and steal away Mirage's speed buff. Weekend was kind of caught out in that middle lane, and instead of heading to the left, he'd go to the right and pick up some farm, but maybe with the jungler there, they're able to secure it. Either way, it does guarantee that if Allegiance do lose that Gold Fury, that they're at least getting something in return on the map. And if Allegiance do end up securing that Gold Fury, it's an even bigger gap created by Weekend's play.
And that Gold Fury was started around the 7.5 minute mark. So even though Gold Fury has increased in value since the beginning of Season 4, it's still relatively early where it's not at its maximum true value. So not the biggest gain here for Flashpoint. They just still keep themselves a little bit more relevant in this stage of the game.
Oceans trying to take the 1v1 up against Xeno, knowing that Purification Beads is down. With PBM there, I think the Hunter was trying to slow him down, but no slowing down CycloneSpin, who's still playing so aggressive on this right-hand side. Both Weekend and Osiris using their ultimates to try and knock down Aquarius and Mirage, who used the 2 ultimates of their own.
CycloneSpin had to use Lord of the Afterlife to make sure he wasn't going to get pulled in by Aquarius. Under that tier 1 on the right, Metyankey now making the rotation. It's going to be a 3-on-2 for Team Allegiance. To make that 3-on-1 as Mirage did back now. This could easily be a tier 1 fallen here for Flashpoint.
Aquarius, I don't think knows Metyankey's here, but as soon as he sees the god, he turns around and just surrenders that 500 gold to that of Team Allegiance, who are up 4-0 in kills, are right about to hit that 10-minute mark. Allegiance really needing this victory, Toli. This victory secures them 6th seed going into the Gauntlet Land. If they were to fall, they'd have to play for the right to not be the bottom seed out of North America.
Definitely not something you want to do, to go into the Gauntlet, to have to face off the Challenger Cup team, because you just never know what you're going to be expecting out of that necessary team, what kind of strategies they've been developing, because the difference between SPL and the Challenger Cup is that there's more footage of all these teams to be able to study from. It's very difficult to do homework against lesser known teams wherever there's just no footage of them.
Well, there are a couple big names in that Challenger Cup. You're expecting teams like Skilladon and Kiki, the SPL gatekeepers, I believe their name is, to really make a push to be at that Gauntlet Land. Astral Authority always near the top of the Challenger Cup leaderboards. A couple other teams right there as well. Catch those games before the SPLs here on Saturday and Sunday. CycloneSpin trying to get that speed buff away from Mirage is not successful, but Incon is all alone in this jungle, chased down and erased by PolarBearMike, number 5 for Team Allegiance. PBM now trying to run away. Nice turnaround to prevent the knockup, but Xeno, now he's the one in a bad spot, and Oceans picks up number 3. PBM, meanwhile, is still delaying the push from Flashpoint. He's still alive. PBM finally get a fall all down to Shadowq, but it was enough to bait in the rest of Flashpoint. 4 dead now. Oceans tried to pick up the deicide. Not quite enough damage to knock down Shadowq, but still 4 for 1 in favor of Team Allegiance.
Incon was the first victim out of Flashpoint. His 2 former teammates, both Weaken and CycloneSpin, doing their best efforts to dive that backline, making that Vulcan non-factor in that engagement. Very easy to really go onto a Vulcan here at this early stages before the second relic becomes available. Not having Aegis, making sure that all the in-hands connected from CycloneSpin couldn't really get away from all those slows.
In this game, Toli, the biggest difference is the lead that Allegiance gets in that solo lane allows them to dictate the pace, where they want to take these fights, and you force Flashpoint to play perfectly in response. The pathing from Incon is not perfect, and as a result, Flashpoint really fall apart after that. When Allegiance, I mean, it goes for, you can say this for every team. When you're allowed to be aggressive and you're allowed to be the ones trying to make the plays, it opens up the door for you to make a lot better plays. But some teams benefit from that more than others. There are a lot of teams that can kind of take the initiative from the other team and then counter-respond. Eager comes to mind in that sort of sense, where they're willing to allow the other team to be the aggressors. Allegiance looks like a completely different team when they get an early lead.
Especially if your solo laner's name is CycloneSpin and your jungler's name is Weaken. These are the 2 players that really want to establish themselves with a very early lead, and CycloneSpin recognizing that the ban from the first game after the secondary phases, he wanted to make sure he had this god available to him in the second game, picking it up beforehand, having a very comfortable lead, and now he's so far ahead that he's built into this height of the Urchin, expecting to just continue dominating these team fights, building more protections.
I love this pickup for CycloneSpin. He's not worried about the damage that Aquarius is going to be putting into him in this solo lane, so he's really more worried about the mid to late game team fights. He's really relying on that level lead that he's earned for themselves to kind of carry the weight in terms of his protections and health early on. Weaken looking for XenoTronics once more. Skadi forced into the Aegis. No purification beads for the Hunter. The Petrified not enough, but the Bluestone is Oceans with number 5 early on here. Incon use that ultimate defensively. Aquarius makes the rotation though, picks up 3, tosses all of them into the tower. Mirage picks up Oceans, but Weaken answers back onto the solo laner.
Metyankey's here as well, dashing on in, but a nice little double flop into the meatball, stunning out 3 members. Backfire though. Lord of the Afterlife under the tier 2 tower, but having the ethereal form means that CycloneSpin has a lot of damage reduction, and with the sustain from PBM, ALG walk away with just a 2 for 1 in their favor.
But Oceans is dead, and then Gold Fury's up. No one to really tank that up for Allegiance, even with the massive advantage they've gotten for themselves. Totally, I think they could have done it though. I mean, look at where everyone on Flashpoint is on the map. Instead, Allegiance is going to try and siege down this tier 1 tower.
Slow and steady, you know, they don't necessarily get the about 150 to about 250 gold per player at this phase of the game. Instead, getting 500 gold total. Metyankey's going to get caught out of position for his transgressions, and now Flashpoint, they're the ones with a 5-on-4 lead for about 30 seconds.
Gotta give shoutouts to Mirage there, the feather step interrupting that dash from Metyankey. Man, I miss the days of the CC immune Agni dash. But
yes.
It was time for that to go. Gold Fury started up here by Team Allegiance. Weaken doesn't want to let it go. There's a 2-man knock-up in the back line, but his dash is blocked. Knocked up there by Shadowq. Decent CC, but Weaken get a fall again to that feather step from Mirage, who's really starting to make a comeback on this Awilix in the mid-game. Huge Petrify out of Oceans, hits 4. Mirage barely able to get up over that wall. Aquarius again with a nice pickup and toss back toward the team, but all of Flashpoint is too low to really answer back.
Too tanky is CycloneSpin and Shadow and PBM, the 2 tanky targets out of Team Allegiance. Picking off Weaken though afterwards was a great opportunity for them, but yet again, sacrificing his own life just to make sure Flashpoint don't grab this Gold Fury. And this is the point in time where Allegiance, they need to make sure that they find some more of these objectives to continue with their early lead. Having 2 stacks now at the height of the Urchin is CycloneSpin.
There's the meditation pop from Shadowq, the flop onto Oceans, not in range for the ultimate was Mirage, who immediately eats it from Metyankey, who turns it around and gets revenge for that kill in the mid lane. CycloneSpin trying to chase down 2 1 HP members. There goes both of them. Aquarius, Xeno, Shadow, all 3 dead. Incon, the only one left alive. Allegiance turns it around once more.
This is the CycloneSpin that we all know and love, playing these aggressive solo laners, and just like that, 6 stacks now on his height of the Urchin, picking up their first Gold Fury of the game. Should have got the earlier one as well, but it doesn't matter because of the fact that they have a very comfortable 7,000 1,000 gold lead.
This is the side lane show right now for Allegiance. Oceans and CycloneSpin combining for 10 of the 14 kills already on the board for Allegiance. But Metyankey's also had a very, very good game on this Agni. That turnaround on a Mirage there was phenomenal.
The bombs just hitting 2 or 3 targets continuously, not to mention Ocean's Petrify. Not necessarily stunning out members, but it doesn't matter. Doing 50% of the damage to people that are turned around behind you still slows them, and the damage was still very impactful. Mirage had to escape from that team fight right off the bat, and Allegiance had the numbers advantage, and Weaken's sacrificial life just to prevent Flashpoint from getting that Gold Fury earlier on is what allowed the rest of his teammates to get back in position.
Say what you will about Weaken, but he has never been a selfish player in terms of what he's willing to do for the team. Giving up his life in that instance absolutely opens the door to allow Allegiance to snag away that Gold Fury and extend their lead. PolarBearMike's healing also came in big play there, Toli. You saw Flashpoint really hanging around, trying to wait for the meditation for Shadowq, but it wasn't able to match that healing coming out of the Guardian Sylvanus.
Also going for a different style of build from the first to second game. PBM went for Hardware and Sovereignty right off the bat. Instead, now going for a very tanky Gauntlet of Thieves, making sure that the rest of his teammates is going to get both of those protections, making sure that they engage rather effectively. Because of whenever you have this kind of an offensive kit between Weaken diving the backline as well as CycloneSpin, it makes it very easy just to find these kills.
XenoTronics has no recourse to that gank at all. Weaken able to pick up the Hunter with no problem whatsoever. Incon, he's in trouble. The bomb is on point once more from Metyankey. Puts number 16 up for Allegiance. Nice meditation coming out of PBM, and Aquarius again with that Whirlwind of Rage and Steel, but this time he only hits one. Shadow surrounded and down, courtesy of Oceans, half a dozen for the Hunter. CycloneSpin, again, just being this frontline annoyance that Flashpoint has no answer to. He forces 2 members back and opens the door for Allegiance to snag 1,500 gold away from Flashpoint.
A lot of momentum riding off of Allegiance here, getting the tier 2 tower. They're not done yet. They want to grab this mid-Phoenix while they still have some minions to eliminate that backdoor protections, taking advantage of a 5-on-2 as now Incon and XenoTronics has revived. Portal Demon could be the next attempt here for Allegiance. I don't really expect them to go for the Fire Giant before spending all that gold in hand.
They've got quite a bit of it right now, and I agree with you. The Portal Demon seems to be the call here for Team Allegiance, who are definitely turning it around from game 1. Real Jekyll and Hyde performance, I would say, from these two teams. Flashpoint in game 1 looks like Allegiance can't even hang with them at all, and then you could say the exact same thing here in game 2, just the other way around.
Absolutely. So they have to figure things out once they do. Both of these teams do encounter potentially yet again in the gauntlet here. Have to make sure that you fix some of these mistakes, because mechanically the first game Allegiance looked a little sloppy. Their positions wasn't the greatest as well. And game number 2 has been the complete opposite here for Flashpoint. They fell in the same trap that Allegiance did.
Absolutely. That solo lane pressure just so important at this stage of the game right now. CycloneSpin, again, just being that frontline presence. There's the ultimate onto 2, and Weaken's right there with him. The 2 longtime teammates combine to put down XenoTronics and force Mirage out of the fight. Petrify slows down 2 members, but it's the 2 tanky targets. Cyclone plucked back into that tier 2. Aquarius says you're not getting out of there quite yet, but Oceans with yet another kill. Cyclone just so tanky. He tanked that tower for so long and is able to get out with 1 HP. He's got the teleport available. He can back no problem and get right back to helping Allegiance on this Fire Giant.
Of course he's tanky. He has 10 stacks of Hide of the Urchin. It's one of the most cost-effective items in the game once you do have the stacks into your disposal. Not only that, having a huge health pool with that Frostbound Hammer, enough physical defense to tank that tower with that Hide of Nemean line, despite the pull under the tower by Mirage, as well as the ultimate from the Xing Chen. It didn't even matter.
This time around, I think that Flashpoint just kind of overcommitted to their strategy. They put all their eggs in the knock-up for Mirage basket. The early Vulcan pick, probably not a necessity, I would say, in the mid lane. And Vulcan, what he really brings to the late game, which we talked about earlier, while that's phenomenal, his early game pressure, it really is, there isn't a whole lot to write home about there.
And not only that, it was the early game lack of pressure from Vulcan against the early game lack of pressure Agni. Why didn't Mirage try to sit in that lane to take advantage, helping Incon get more of an advantage, at least in the experience department, maybe even gold, depending on how quick they were able to push that tower, and then potentially look for some invades. But instead, they tried to match fire with fire, having a 2-on-2 in the solo lane, which seemed to be the key theme for both of these games. The 2v2 matchup in that solo lane didn't work out for Allegiance in game 1, but certainly did in game number 2.
You look at putting all the eggs in one basket. Well, Metyankey says, hey guys, there's an item that counters knockups, and that's Stone of Gaia. New passive on that item, and now picking it up in that mid lane. Very non-traditional build coming out of the new mid laner for Team Allegiance. The Void Stone's not something you usually see on a character like Agni, who really does want to play from a distance. But with the Shadowq Bacchus that's doing quite a bit of damage, who's actually third on his team in player damage. The top 3 player damage members of Flashpoint, all magical. So Metyankey countering to build that a little bit.
Despite Shadowq having to commit just to be able to get the aura penetration from Voidstone, this also will allow Metyankey to dash in aggressively, getting that penetration on every single member from Flashpoint, having even more damage potentially for PBM to do some damage with his Wrath of Terror and Wisps combination.
Weaken up into the tree of Yggdrasil. Looking for XenoTronics, but Shadowq is zoning on the backside. Nice Vulcan ultimate out of Incon, but they're just too far behind. They can't do anything with it.
The bomb's doing a lot of damage. 2 members forced to disengage. CycloneSpin zoning so long that Oceans is able to pick off Mirage. It was a 4-on-2 on the left side Phoenix, whereas CycloneSpin was zoning out 3.
There's the left side Phoenix, not quite down yet, but Weaken puts down Shadowq. Middle Phoenix just respawning now, but the solo and jungle for Team Allegiance will pick that off. Metyankey dashing into the Titan, but not done enough damage.
Force the Aegis out of Incon with that one bomb. ALG are looking so good in this second game, getting 2 Phoenixes off the map. The Fire Giant still around their belts for another minute and a half. It's an easy opportunity for them to clean up this last Phoenix, having about a 20,000 gold lead with probably a lot of gold in hand. They're going to be able to finish off some of their 5th items, start working on their 6th one. CycloneSpin with almost 3,000 gold in hand.
Yeah, he's going to hit that 3K mark before he backs after knocking down these last 2 buffs on the right-hand side. A little surprised Allegiance to go to end the game there, totally. They had the 5-on-2 advantage with about 12 to 15 seconds remaining on each of the members of Flashpoint. With 2 Phoenixes down, they could have potentially ended there.
Well, what's the difference between ending the game there versus ending the game in about 3 to 4 minutes when you have a guaranteed Fire Giant, a guaranteed 20,000 gold lead, and the fact that Flashpoint, they can't even leave their base here. They have to defend all 3 lanes against these Fire Minions, so that means they can't contest this Fire Giant that's about to respawn in a minute and a half.
Well, maybe Metyanky's hungry. Needs to go eat lunch.
Maybe he put something in the microwave real quick, you know?
That's true. Min-maxing.
You know, like
use his last death timer. He's like, okay, guys, we have 13 minutes to end this game, and then I'm going to get my Hot Pocket. I don't know what Hot Pocket cooks for 13 minutes, but maybe like a real fancy one.
Man, just imagine touching that one.
That'd be real. That'd be lava. That'd be lava coming out of that.
And it's a little bit misleading too, because like sometimes it's actually hotter inside as well. So you might touch it and be like, oh, it's kind of warm, right? That's fine. This is eatable. So you take a bite, and then like all of a sudden you're like, my mouth is literally on fire.
This is what we do here at the hi-rez office. In between games, we cast each other eating Hot Pockets, actually.
Or Lunchables.
Or Lunchables.
There's a discussion and debate here between the kid Lunchables versus the adult version.
I'm a fan. I like both. You know,
crackers versus almonds.
Yeah, exactly. We got the almonds version. That's pretty solid. I like. You know, they really those adult Lunchable things really turned me on to almonds. Now I'm all about them now.
It's all about that.
And by the way, in case you
wanted to know, it's all about them gains.
It's all about them gains. Absolutely. F-Dot says almonds, by the way.
Almonds?
Yeah, it's
like
the New
that,
York
right?
thing. Yeah, he thinks it's right, but it's not. It's almonds. Chat, just so you know. Almonds. It's all in right now for Allegiance. They've got an easy way to win this game. 3 Phoenixes down, waiting for that Fire Giant to respawn. Only 15 seconds left, and Flashpoint just trying to snag up any farm they can to try and defend it. Frenzy is picked up here for Incon, and if he's able to find an ultimate like he did last time, maybe there's a chance with that Frenzy that it could one-shot some of the members of ALG.
It's a level 16 Vulcan. He doesn't have Ratatoskr completed. It's only a level 3 ultimate here, making him less impactful that he would definitely like here. Just too much of an experience differential between Allegiance and Flashpoint. This is looking so bad for Flashpoint. If they lose this one, they're going to be guaranteed bottom-seeded team here, but Allegiance, on the other hand, they win this, they're going to put themselves at 6 points, one above Noble, putting themselves in a comfortable spot, at least in the gauntlet.
On the other side, though, Toli, yes, Flashpoint may guarantee themselves 8th place here with this finish, but they're definitely looking stronger than they did at the beginning of the split. I think there's a lot of hope, if you're a Flashpoint fan, that they could potentially make some noise in this gauntlet, because you look, they'd be playing, if they guarantee themselves a seed, they'd play up against the Challenger Cup team. They're able to find that victory. They go up against Noble, who's been on the downtrend as of late, and then up against this Allegiance team, and they've proven that they can take it to this squad, certainly in game 1 of this set.
As long as they can figure out the right way to prevent any sort of momentum from occurring onto this solo jungle combination out of Allegiance, they've always been so strong together once they get that momentum, heading back into playing together from 2 years ago. Just so much history and synergy between these two players.
All 3 Phoenixes going to respawn one after the other, but I think Allegiance just going to knock them down as soon as they pop back up. Oceans takes care of the mid, while the rest takes care of the left. Frenzy popped, Weaken immediately onto that backside, trying to find the kills. Just no damage. All of Allegiance is completely healthy. Oceans cleans up Mirage. CycloneSpin's ulting in your Titan room, chasing you into your fountain. Cyclone going to give it up and try and get away, despite being 1 HP, but you've got so many Fire Minions to deal with here for Flashpoint.
Having an aggressive build now with the chin size and the oboe. CycloneSpin definitely wants some more kills. We can dive in the backline with Oceans, finding 2 kills as Oceans. CycloneSpin, though, going to get a return back. It doesn't matter. Allegiance, they find the split, and now they guarantee themselves that 6th place spot in the gauntlet.
Allegiance, Noble, and Flashpoint all locked in. 6, 7, 8 seeds going into the gauntlet. And these have been some solid sets here, Toli, so far. We've got a lot coming up later on today. But before we get to those real spicy sets at the top of North America, we got to break down this one. Send it over to Taco and Tom with the breakdown.
Thanks a lot, Aggro. Flashpoint versus ALG went in a very different direction, if you ask us to. We're just talking about the Flashpoint upset. Very exciting to see Flashpoint really come through and find a win towards the end of the season. But is it too late?
I mean, I had a fun time playing devil's advocate and pulling for them for a game. It doesn't surprise me, though, when you look at the drafting, especially in game number 1, I think that Flashpoint really played to their advantages and their strengths.
Yeah, I mean, they went with the ability-based Hunter Medusa right here, and Medusa was pretty much the story both games, but we'll focus on Flashpoint. And right here, this is the perfect point to really talk about how Medusa impacts a game.
There is just so much objective control on the side of Flashpoint, and XenoTronics on this Medusa did an excellent job of portraying that just non-stop here, especially where he actually steals away the Gold Fury and secures the kill onto Weaken. I mean, that's just overall phenomenal objective control point, which is what you really want to see coming out of Medusa. Her Petrify is probably one of the best, I wouldn't say securing ultimates in the game as far as a Hunter is concerned for objectives, but it's certainly a huge deterrence factor for other teams. And any team would have probably made that shot call. I mean, you mentioned it yourself. That's a fairly safe play to make. Call. You see the enemy team on the other side of the map, you immediately want to go in, but Xeno just happened to be waiting around the corner. Yeah,
I mean, sometimes you might say something about taking the gamble with the Thor ultimate still around, but I think you still fight into that knowing that you have some of the tools that you do. It's just the Medusa, the timing, and just excellent play coming out from the Hunter there to really wrap that and make that shot really count. You know, when you look at other Hunters, Hou-Yi, his ultimate's more of a deterrent than a real secure. When Hou-Yi drops the ultimate, you're really looking to disengage rather than anything else. The really big bang. You're right, Medusa, absolutely integral into what this team was able to do. 12-3 was the kill count as far as this game is concerned, and ALG just really couldn't make anything happen.
And it wasn't, we also mentioned that during the game, it wasn't necessarily ALG playing horribly or doing anything massively wrong. It was just, Flashpoint just was there at the right time almost every single time, and because of it, nothing went ALG's way in the slightest. Like, they just ended up falling so far behind. The gold started becoming an issue, especially after XenoTronics was able to steal away that Gold Fury from Weaken and Oceans, and then on top of that, they just maintained the lead. Yeah,
you know, from over here, it just looked like ALG's no good, very bad day. Like, nothing really, they didn't play terribly. Nothing really was, oh man, we can miss that ult, watch out. It was just, oh well. And sometimes that happens. But even better is when you're able to turn it around. Game number 2 went absolutely the way that ALG wanted them to. Game number 1, not so much. And again, still, different game, different team, different player, different Hunter, still Medusa.
And really, Medusa is kind of just that shining factor that you really want to see from your hunters. And Oceans just did the exact same thing that XenoTronics did in game number 1. He's like, hey, I know that you can do this, but let me show you if I can do it better or not. And I think he did an excellent job just every single time. A little bit more aggression, which is really what I like to see out of Oceans. He does have a little bit more aggressive playstyle in comparison to Xeno, and it shows 100%. He was not only controlling the objectives, but a lot of the team fights as well.
There's also something to be said about, and I love when characters come in and out of the meta, because some players already have those characters in their arsenal. And Oceans has been playing this Medusa like he's Illuminati since he came in as a rookie. And playing it up here, this is when the player says, thank you, meta, game, whoever really makes these things happen. Because Ocean's been wanting to play this Medusa, but has to play the Hoyis and the other characters, and then she finally slips into the meta, and then bam, all of a sudden, hey, that's my god, I'm gonna bring her out, and Oceans slays with it. 28 kills in total. ALG really bringing the pain here.
Yeah, we saw in that last post-game stats that it was actually, what, like 13-3, and then this time around you just got the 28-5, so ALG were certainly not happy about that. But I mean, at the end of the day though, Flashpoint's still split. That's still an upset, and I think that that's still a pretty significant victory for Flashpoint to pick up, even though it doesn't really impact as far as LAN is concerned, mostly just looking at Gauntlet seeding at this point in time, but that's still exactly what you'd want to happen. It shows that Flashpoint still has potential, and I think that that's the most important factor.
That's the yes. Damn it, you said exactly what I was going to say. That's the most important factor because, frankly, when I really speak about this team, I think about the individuals, not as a unit. I think that Flashpoint individually coming into this season, now, if you ask these players publicly, they probably can't say it. But I don't think anybody on this team really expected to win, and personally, I think that's okay. I think that all 5 players on this team individually came in to improve. I think that you can look at all 5 players coming down from the solo lane all the way down to the hunter role and say that all of these guys have had successful moments, but still need to improve a little bit here or there, and that's the goal of Flashpoint. So to end your season here on a positive note, beating ALG, or at least splitting with ALG right here, I think that is a strong look towards the future, whether this team stays together for the summer or not. So if you're a Flashpoint fan or an individual fan of Incon and the likes of the rest of the squad, I think that you can only look up and really be happy about what you saw here. So Sword Noble, FP versus ALG. These two win. Sword wind up taking down their opposition 2-0, and then of course the last one was a split. With the split, that means we're not going to have a tiebreaker regarding those two teams, and the only one left on the table is going to be E United and LG. So as we move on, we'll break it down a little bit as we get into it. Stay tuned for more tiebreaker implications and LG, E United, and the rest of the squad. We'll see you in a bit.